Okay. So thank you, Fran, for asking me to come do this. And like I said, for getting me here on the Zoom rather than in person. So yeah, I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of the history of Botetourt County. As you can see from the dates here, we are looking at 251 years of history. So I am going to try and cram a whole lot into a pretty small window here. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. So the first inhabitants of Botetourt County were obviously the Native Americans. A lot of the tribes that, or some of the tribes that resided in the county area that would become the county were Tataro, Saponi, Siouan, which I think I'm pretty much butchering that name. Many Native American artifacts have been and continue to be found throughout the county. Eagle Rock, Buchanan, the Greenfield area are just a few locations where artifacts have been found. Until the end of the Revolutionary War, around that time period, Botetourt was sort of the last frontier, the sort of last stop before you've just sort of dropped off into this uncharted wilderness going sort of westward. There was a few homesteads, a couple of forts, but not much else. Around 1670, early explorers ventured into the area that would become Botetourt County, as well as into what is now the Roanoke Valley. These encroaching settlers and explorers caused tension with the Native American tribes. There was a lot of skirmishes going on, and that's sort of around I guess Bacon's Rebellion time, when people were just sort of fighting, and as a result, many of the tribes in the area were forced down into North Carolina. So as many, like I said, Native Americans were being sort of pushed out, a lot more folks began traveling from Pennsylvania by the Great Road. Some people call it the Great Road, some people call it the Great Wagon Road, some people call it the Great Warrior Road, I believe, but it's all essentially from Philadelphia area down into along the East Coast into Virginia and the Carolinas. And you can see here a little bit on this little map, there's Fincastle, there's Big Lick, even Rocky Mount made the cut there for this map that highlights the trek that folks were taking to get from Philadelphia down into this area. And it was a lot of English, German, Scots-Irish folks that were coming down into this area. In the early 1700s, the Colonial Council of Virginia began to offer 50 acres of land to every white person, male or female, I understand, that moved to the area. And so with that, the population really sort of took off. And Benjamin Borden, who, that's a name that some folks might recognize, he was able to get a large piece of land that allowed many families to sort of come in and settle this area. And that was around 1736. And so I am going to apologize now because I do have several maps included in this presentation, and it's hard to fit some of these maps onto these PowerPoint slides. So I know that some of these probably won't be able to see too much. So I apologize, but we're gonna do what we can. So this here map, we're gonna talk about, so Native American skirmishes sort of persisted. One of the earliest forts in the area was at Looney's Ferry in Buchanan. In the mid 1700s, Colonel William Preston was tasked with sort of patrolling the area with companies of men to sort of keep things calm. And not long after that, he would establish Greenfield. And Greenfield, it wasn't a fort, it was his home where he and his family lived, but it was a larger home. And so it sort of served as protection for some of the neighboring settlers. George Washington would visit the area during this time. He would come through Botetourt, also part of Roanoke, of what is now Mill Mountain area, to survey forts and land. And so this map that is difficult to see, you can sort of see the dotted line there that shows his trek through the area at that time. And now this map that you really can't see, I did want to include it because it shows the vastness of the county when it started, and all these little marks there, those are names of families that settled on each sort of little spot of the county. And so Botetourt County originally formed from Augusta County. The Virginia Assembly put forth the, the Act of Division in 1769, and it was approved by the governor, and it took effect in early 1770. The county was named after Lord Botetourt, whose actual name was Norborne Berkeley, and he was one of sort of the last, towards the end there, of the colonial governors. He was really popular with the folks in Botetourt County in general. He would try and peacefully sort of settle disagreements between the colonists and England. And so folks really liked that about him. And so the original Botetourt County was pretty massive. It stretched from almost the Mississippi area to parts of Illinois and Ohio, Kentucky, a little bit of Wisconsin's even in there, I think, at some points. This giant county did not last very long, however. By 1772, different states and other counties started to be carved out of that. Israel Christian, who is one of the original residents of Botetourt County, he gifted 45 acres of his own land to be used for the formation of the county, the seat of Fincastle. So that sort of shows that. This map that you can actually see, I wanted to include that so that folks could get an idea. Again, you can see Illinois is here, Indiana, what Tennessee's down here. It says Fincastle County. Fincastle County is no longer in existence. The town of Fincastle is. But yeah, again, I just wanted to show, you can see the line here from Botetourt County to Augusta County. And a lot of folks who are doing family history research, genealogy research, make their way eventually back to the Fincastle area to look for different records and things. And I tell people that a lot of us actually were Botetourt residents very early on, no matter where you were, pretty much. So again, the tale is old as time. The Native American tensions were still really high in the area. So around 1774, Colonel William Fleming, Colonel William Christian, Colonel Andrew Lewis, a lot of you probably have heard of them, came together for the Battle of Point Pleasant near the Ohio River to fight against the Mingo and the Shawnee tribes. And it's my understanding that the colonists had more casualties than the Native American side, but it was considered a victory for the colonists. And so the Native Americans had to give up all the territory in that area on our side of the Ohio River. So with the Native Americans all but gone, and more families settling in the area, Botetourt became a proper community. We had churches, businesses, schools, all sorts of normal, regular type of things. St. Mark's Episcopal Church is also celebrating 251 years. It was established in 1770 as well. It was the original Church of England in this area. Many parishioners did leave during the Revolutionary War because nobody wanted to, be associated with anything English then, obviously. So the church actually did lose its building during that time. it would later purchase land, and the church built its current building in 1837, which is the photo here today. That's that building. I have been told that the service at St. Mark's has varied almost none from the original services held early on. I have not attended St. Mark's, so I cannot confirm or deny, but I do know that that is still a very active church, and they still, like I said, are very much involved. Mill Creek Baptist Church was founded around 1804. Again, still active congregation. There's Fincastle United Methodist, Glade Creek Lutheran, Fincastle Presbyterian, many more that I am just, sort of forgetting. They were all churches founded in the county in the mid to late 1700s through the 1800s, and many of them are still going strong. One of the big industries in the county early on was iron furnaces. And so several furnaces are still standing in the county. Many of them are now on private land, so you can't really access them or see them. And obviously these furnaces are not actively in use anymore. During the Civil War, Tredegar Iron Works in Richmond would use iron ore from Botetourt County to make cannons and guns. And so the photo on my left here, that is Catawba furnace. And the photo there on the right, that is actually Tredegar in the 1850s, I want to say. I should have added that date. But yeah, so that was a real big business. There are several furnaces. Again, Catawba furnace, Rebecca furnace. I mean, there's just plenty in the county. A lot of them are not standing anymore, though. So farming was obviously sort of the original industry in the area. It is still very present in Botetourt today. Wheat, hemp, corn, they were all really major crops in the area, along with some others. Several farms in Botetourt have sort of pivoted to also include tourism sort of things alongside their normal agricultural business. Lehman Farms, Jeter Farms, for example, have annual fall activities like corn mazes and hay rides and pumpkin patches and stuff that draw in thousands of people each year. This photo here, this is actually a much more modern photo, and it is a bailiwick farm. You can see the corn there in the distance, but they also do weddings and special events and things. So, like I said, while farming is still very prevalent in the county, they're also doing other things as well. Mills were all over the county. Looney's Mill, Breckenridge Mill, Cloverdale Mill, Brews Mill, all mills in the county that operated from the mid 1700s until Cloverdale Mill burned in 1968. And that was sort of the last working mill up until that late of a time period. If anyone's ever been on 81, exit 156, that's Brews Mill Road. And the Explorer Park actually has Brews Mill Tavern. And I think Twin Creeks Brewery operates out of that building now at Explorer Park. But it is the Brews Mill Tavern. This photo here is Breckenridge Mill and in Fincastle, and it was converted into apartments in the 1980s. And as far as I know, it is still apartments or a residence of some kind even today. So tourism is still, that's a big business here in Roanoke and our surrounding areas today, but it was also big business early on. I know many people have heard of Hot Springs, Virginia, near Homestead, and White Sulphur Springs near Greenbrier, West Virginia. But Botetourt boasted many of its own spas and springs that attracted a lot of visitors as well to the area early on. Visitors would come in on the Norfolk Western line and go visit the springs. Blue Ridge Springs was probably the most famous of these. It had this big, which I wish I had had a chance to find the photo and put it in here, a big like 4-story hotel building on the property, associated there with the springs. It was built shortly after the Civil War, and it burned down in 1871. They rebuilt it, but by like the 1920s, as people started using automobiles to get just, wherever they wanted to go and not relying on trains, attendance declined. And I believe by the early like 1930s, they had closed it down, and the building itself is not standing anymore. But there was Dagger Springs, Fincastle Springs, Botetourt Springs, Coiner Springs. They were all local spas in the county that encouraged folks to come and take the waters, which is a phrase that I like that phrase for some reason. The Haith Hotel and some of the Western Hotel buildings are some of the only remaining structures still standing. They aren't necessarily associated with the springs or anything, but just some of the earlier like hotels that people would stay at in the county. This image here, it is actually of the New York Herald from September of 1868, and you can see sort of the zoom in photo there. There is a mention of Coiner Springs is the only watering place in Virginia where there is no bar for the refreshment of the company. So worth noting, apparently, that there's no bar at the Coiner Springs Resort. But like I said, this is the New York Herald. So places really bustling, cosmopolitan sort of areas like New York, visitors were looking to come to Botetourt County even, in the 1860s. So Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. You cannot talk about Botetourt without talking about Lewis and Clark. So they stopped in Fincastle numerous occasions during their expeditions through the early 1800s. William Clark married Julia Hancock of Fincastle in 1808. And the town of Fincastle is a Lewis and Clark site on the Lewis and Clark Trail as of 2012. So the image there on my right, that is the Lewis and Clark marker that is actually on the Botetourt County Historical Society building. So we are there on the trail. And then the other photo there, that is a book that Jean Crotty wrote to sort of go into greater detail about Lewis and Clark's time in Fincastle. With the founding of the county and its early economy, enslaved labor was part of that life. And as with many other communities, there is unfortunately little documented history surrounding the early African-American population. A movement to secure better education for African-American children of Botetourt began in the 1930s. Academy Hill was the African-American school for the county. Integration took place in 1966, and by all accounts, it was a smooth transition with that here locally. The photos here that are on this slide, they are part of an ongoing exhibit at Botetourt County Historical Society. Judith Barnett, who serves on the board for me in Botetourt, and her brother, Edward Barnett, they have worked tirelessly to compile photos and history to help document the African-American community throughout Botetourt. And so these photos here are part of that effort that we are very, very thankful to have in Botetourt. Norval Lee, he's a Botetourt native from the northern part of the county in Eagle Rock area. He would go on to become an Olympic boxer and compete in the 1952 Olympics in Finland. Prior to his boxing career, he served in the Air Force, was sent to the South Pacific during World War II. He would later go on to Howard University and get a degree in engineering. He would later serve as a mentor for youth in the DC area and was a really big advocate for education. He died in 1992, and work is currently underway. Ken Conklin, who wrote this book about Norval, he is working with Nelson Harris to get a marker put up in Eagle Rock, and so we're hoping to have that up sometime, hopefully in the near future. And so we're back here to a map that you probably can't see, but Botetourt County is actually made up of several towns and smaller communities. So you can sort of see like Eagle Rock's there, Troutville, there's Trinity, different areas of the county that make up Botetourt. And if I ever talk to anyone about Botetourt that isn't really familiar with the area, they're sort of like, oh, like is that Fincastle? Are you talking about Fincastle? So a lot of folks sort of recognize Fincastle as being part of Botetourt, which is accurate. It is the main hub of the county, the court's there, a lot of the offices are there. It's one of the oldest parts of the county from 1772. Much of Fincastle, at least the town there of Fincastle, is included on the National Register of Historic Places that was done in 1969. And so this photo here is from 1969 as part of their National Register application process. And this is looking down Main Street there in Fincastle. Some revitalization is happening in Fincastle, like new restaurants are coming in and different things. And so a lot of good things are coming to Fincastle. One of the landmarks right in sort of the center there of town is the courthouse. And the first iteration of the courthouse was built in 1770. It was a wooden log structure. Botetourt County Historical Society actually has the original bench and the original witness chair and the bell from that building. And a brick building was built in 1818 and renovated in the mid 1800s, I believe. And the building, as it is now, was built after a fire burned down the courthouse in the early 1970s. And so this photo here, that is, again, from 1969, but it is what the courthouse looks like pretty much now. Plans are currently underway to remodel and renovate the courthouse area. So you guys are gonna have to stay tuned to see how that works out, turns out. So obviously, Fincastle is full of historic buildings dating back to like 1790s. Historic Fincastle Incorporated has a self-guided walking tour available that highlights a lot of these different locations. So if you're ever in the area, they have these brochures here. This photo is just sort of the cover. You open it up and it's just like all these different like locations and little captions to go along with them to tell the history of all these areas. The Israel Christian House is on the tour, the courthouse, a lot of different buildings in Fincastle included on that. Troutville is a town that makes up part of Botetourt. It was founded in 1956, started apparently as Troutsville with an S in there in the middle, because all that was there was a post office, and the postmaster was James Trout. And much of everything else there was orchards and farms. And so this, you can't see too well. The cardinal here is sitting on some apples on the town sign there to give recognition to the orchards that were in that area. Buchanan was established early 1800s. Its proximity along the James River helped turn it into Botetourt's largest town, and it still is the largest in the county. It's a hub there on the Kanawha Canal early on. It was a Confederate supply stop during the Civil War. And the town was a big industrial center during World War I as well. It sort of began to decline in the 1960s. A lot of folks wanted suburban neighborhood living and not living out in sort of like rural areas. a revitalization effort started in the 1990s and is ongoing today. The Buchanan Theater, it's sort of a landmark piece in Buchanan, and if you have not been, you should go if you ever get the opportunity. It's sort of on the same level as like Grandin Theater, a very historic theater in the area. And a lot of people, if they don't recognize much else, the swinging bridge there on my left, a lot of folks will recognize that as being the bridge in Buchanan. There are also a few unincorporated towns that make up the county. I didn't even get to list all of them here on this slide. There's many, many more, and they're just like these little communities throughout the county. I've lived here my entire 35 years, and when I was making this presentation, I just learned that Gala is a place in Botetourt. So apologies to anyone from Gala. I just did not know that that was even a place, and that's in the northern part of the county on the Eagle Rock sort of end of things as well. But yeah, so a lot of like little areas that make up this county. And this is a map. You can see the white there outlined. That is the county as it is today. And Botetourt, it's made up of about 550 square miles, a population of a little over 33,000. There's 11 or 13 schools. There's a sheriff's office. I think there's 11 fire and rescue crews, 2 golf courses, 3 wineries, 4 libraries. We've got a lot going on in this county. And so with all these things in the county, Greenfield Education and Training Center is now the county administration location, and Botetourt Sports Complex, you can see there in that bottom corner, is new to the county. Daleville Town Center, which the other 2 photos here show Daleville Town Center, which is restaurants and apartments and this outdoor concert pavilion sort of area where they do a lot of events, a farmer's market, and it's nice weather. That's really just expanded. Ballast Point was in the county, and Rocky Forge Wind is in the county now. Botetourt YMCA opened in 2019. A lot, like I said, a lot of new things happening to the county, but there's still plenty of history. Like I said, Botetourt County Historical Society is obviously there. Historic Fincastle Incorporated is there. Greenfield Advisory Council. Renee Worthen at the Fincastle Library has a huge room of genealogy and history. The courthouse with Tommy Moore, the clerk of court, has just so many wonderful historic records. Godwin Cemetery, again, I'm sure I'm leaving out other folks and other groups, but even with all this new development coming to the county, there are still lots of individuals, lots of groups out there wanting to preserve the history of this county. Which conveniently brings me to, as Fran had mentioned early on, when I'm not in Botetourt County, I am at the Historical Society of Western Virginia in Roanoke, and we right now have a Botetourt County exhibit on view. It is Botetourt County, 250+1 years of delight, and it is an exhibit that chronicles the history of the county through its decorative arts. The Roanoke Times just did a really great piece for us on this exhibit, and we have a summer lecture series that ties in with it that's getting ready to start at the end of June. And so if you have not been by to see it, please come by. It's a wonderful exhibit. It's the biggest that the Society has ever done. So please come by and see it. It is up till November 2nd. Check our website for more details, and like our social media and stuff, is we're going to be posting more things for that as we move along. And here's my shameless plug right here at the very end. If you think Botetourt has a lot of history and you're looking for more, please hit the Southwest Virginia History Scavenger Hunt Trail. We are running it from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and there are 15 other area history museums that are participating in this throughout the summer, and it runs from Bedford area down into Wytheville. So there's a lot of area that we're going to cover, and there's a little passport and everything if you have small kids. I was telling Fran, you know, before we started that at Botetourt on Monday, I actually had a group of like 8 grown adults, not a kid in sight, that were doing this scavenger hunt. So it is for all, any and all that want to participate. So please come out, see all that we've got going on. And with that, I'm sending it back to Fran.
All right.